All right. So I think we're on, everybody. So Boker Tov, good morning. This is a class that I've really wanted to have, a discussion I wanted to have for a long time, because there are some in our community who either never received or don't remember what their Hebrew name is, let alone Hebrew names of parents. And I think it would be a service to everybody to spend some time talking about the significance of Hebrew names, and also techniques or methods of going about choosing one, because there are several ways of doing it. So let's, for the blessing of being together this morning to talk about this subject, we join together with these words: Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Now, if you're watching this after the fact, everybody out there in YouTube land, the materials that we're using, the outline, will be available to everybody on our website. So, what's in a Hebrew name? That's what I've entitled this morning's discussion. In 2012, actress Natalie Portman gave birth to a son whom she named Aleph. Now, Aleph, of course, like we talked about with Aliyah, really speaks to one's Jewish identity and connection, in this case, to family and the generations that came before him. Similar to names like, anybody named Pesach, or Yom Tov, Yontif, or Abba, which means father, or Tova, from the word Tov, good, or Mazel. So it's those kind of names which kind of stand out. Now, before, when I asked you to share about your Hebrew names, many of you uttered the names of characters or people in Torah. And so I want to talk a little bit about names in Torah. For instance, in the book of Genesis, we just read a couple of weeks ago, in portion Bereshit, the Lord God formed the earth, every beast of the field and every fowl of the heavens, and God brought them to man, to Adam, to see what he would call it. And whatever the name Adam or Adam called each living thing, that was what its name would be. So very important to name things. What is it about naming something, whether Hebrew or English or whatever? What is it about having a name to something? What does that do for you or for other people?
Identity.
It's a
Absolute identity.
as the identity. All right, it really fixes an identity. Tom.
Also, in a sense, your dreams for your child.
Yes. We'll get to that. But yes, what the name says a lot about what you see in someone or for someone, God willing, in the future. So that's good. Anybody else about naming stuff? Okay. Yes.
Well, mine was Meyer, but I've been called Mike since the day I was born.
But again, it kind of sounds the same. It's kind of alliteration, Mike, Meyer, kind of, or Shlomo. So yes.
I've been brought up to learn that we are named after previous family.
Yes. And we'll get to that, I promise. That's in
Yes,
large part
yes.
how things are done, especially in the Ashkenazic world. Yes.
Rather than what the meaning is, aren't most of the names chosen after a grandparent who is not living?
Oftentimes, but not necessarily. And it's interesting when our bar bat mitzvah get up and talk about their names, that yes, there's still cases of that, but there are other ways that people go about choosing names too. So that's why I'm glad we're having this talk. So back to Torah for a second. So Adam comes from the word Adamah, or ground. So he was a person of the earth. Remember, from dust we come. And Eve, his life partner, is Chava, from the word chai, for life. So it really speaks to what they were about there, the progenitors of life, if you will. Abram and Sarai, their names are an indication of, at the time, being childless. Their names are sort of incomplete in a sense. But their names are changed to, of course, Abraham and Sarah when they enter the Brit, they enter the covenant between God and the Jewish people. So their name change really speaks to that event. And that's one of the factors that could be used in choosing a name. Jacob, who we're reading about now in the Torah, is given the name Yisrael. That's coming up soon, because he wrestled with God through an angel of God and won, was victorious. And of course, he goes on to become the father of the 12 tribes. On a deeper level, the book of Genesis teaches that God created the world, of course, with speech. God says, let there be light, and there's light. God says, let there be, heaven and earth, there's heaven and earth. The world was spoken into being. So in the Kabbalah, the mystical Jewish writings, it's explained that the 22 sacred letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet, are the spiritual building blocks of all creation, of all created reality, and that the name of something represents the combination of those sacred letters that reflects, as Tom mentioned before, its distinct characteristics and the purpose and role towards which that thing was created or that person was created for. So it tells a lot about someone, or what our hopes and prayers are for them. Your Hebrew name is your spiritual call sign, in a sense, embodying your unique character traits and your God-given gifts. And then some writings, sacred writings about just names, and because obviously we don't just name anyone any name. A good name, it says in Proverbs, shall be chosen of good oil, of something very valuable. One's name should be a contributing factor towards becoming a righteous, a good person. And in the Mishnah, it's taught that each of us earns our name, and that the crown of creating a good name for yourself outdoes or outweighs the crown of Torah or even of priesthood or royalty. That's how important names are. And, we all probably, if I told you a name or something, especially a famous person, you'd probably have an association, hopefully positive, in other cases negative, just based on the name that person has created for him or herself, in a sense, by the way they've lived their life and their actions. And of course, bring honor to one's family name too is something very important in Judaism and other cultures. So, but I digress. So names. Joseph, who we'll get to in a little bit in the Torah, his brothers don't recognize him when they go to Egypt after he's been, taken away and made a name for himself there, because among other things, he had an Egyptian name, Zaphnath Paneah. So it went with his role, his life at that point, because his life was not with the Israelites, his life was with the Egyptians. Finally, biblical names often describe people's circumstances, and there's some examples there. Elisha, my God is my redemption. Raphael, God should be healed. Sorry, God has healed.
God is what?
Is healed.
Healed.
Raphael is the angel of healing.
Oh.
Moses, he was drawn out of the water by Pharaoh's daughters. Reuven, Leah says, God looked upon me, seeing I was unloved, and granted me a child. So it really talks about that. Any other or thoughts about Torah, biblical names, if you will? Or
Shlomo,
Yep.
King Solomon.
yes.
I was in Israel and I was lost. I was trying to find King Solomon's street.
Right.
And I kept saying, Solomon, Melech, Solomon. Nobody understood me. I said, Shlomo, Melech. And then they knew right off.
Yeah.
And I got to where I needed to be.
Yes, Shlomo, and they must say, and
Because
what?
I don't have many wives. I'm not really that much like
Right.
Solomon.
Besides having a lot of wives, what else do we associate Shlomo with? Of course.
Idolatry.
Well, besides
Wisdom.
the wisdom. We say the wisdom. We have the wisdom of Solomon.
Wisdom.
Make a Solomon-like decision, and so I wonder if that went into the selection of your Hebrew name. Perhaps they thought, oh, we want a wise. We have a wise son, or a wise son to be. But that's funny. Hebrew names, and Tom, you brought this up before. Hebrew names express a parent's joy at the birth of their child. Some parents have in mind the name well before even conception of their child or start of adoption, while others go through lists. And I have a couple of books here. The Complete Book of Hebrew Baby Names by Shadar Shir Sidi. A Dictionary of Jewish Names and Their History by Ben-Zion Kaganoff. And finally, the new Jewish baby book by the one and only Anita Diamant of Red Tent fame, the author of that. And so there are books aplenty. There's an online site called myhebrewname.com, and you can research and find out just about any Hebrew name there is, including make some Yiddish variations and meanings of them. So we have the resources to do that today. With a Hebrew name, though, comes, of course, an identity, a community, and a way, hopefully, of helping one understand his or her place in the world. That's how powerful names and Hebrew names are. They have powerful connections to Jewish tradition. Hashem, or other names of God, come from belief that God's name is unpronounceable and unknowable, so God can't really be confined to. And of course, there are, depending on who you ask, 70 or 100 more names for God, because it's hard to limit God to just one aspect or one identity. Finally, finding the right Hebrew name can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Finding a beautiful name for a beautiful soul, or a strong name like Ari or Arye from lion for endurance or persistence. So it could have that intent in finding it. Yes.
The Orthodox believe in dropping the O from God
Mm-hmm.
in all the spelling.
Yes.
There's usually a
Right.
hyphen
Because
there.
exactly, because you're right. G-D, as my father blessed memory did, because out of respect for God. All right. Well, with that in mind, let's go to the last two things I want to cover today, which are Hebrew names connecting us to key moments in our life. Yes. Before I do that,
Yeah, there's also
Please.
a assumption of
Mhm.
change.
uh,
And that's all the, we'll call them Yids, that relocated to Israel, the Zionists and the Laborites, changed their names from the Yiddish names to Hebrew names. So you have the movie Exodus, Ari ben Canaan, the son of Canaan.
Yeah.
You've got there's another, the son of a lion.
Ari or Aryeh,
Yeah.
Catholic. But that speaks to our names talking about a significant moment in our lives. In that case, coming to Midinat Yisrael, and then you're going to go, so you go to that. So perfectly understandable. So Hebrew names connecting us to key moments in life, starting from a baby naming. A baby boy is very often named at his Brit Milah, at his circumcision. If the Brit is delayed, some authorities maintain the name should be given when the father and mother, in this case, are called to the Torah before the Brit. However, more often than not, the custom is to wait until the circumcision, the Brit has been done, and then announce the name. That's what I do at Brit Milah ceremonies. If the baby, though, is ill, and people would like to be able to pray for the child using his or her name, then of course it could be given earlier to let people do that. Some people, though, have a custom of waiting until Shabbat to have the naming, as we've had on our Bima many times, when it can be done in the presence of a greater community. Among Sephardim, the ceremony of naming a daughter is called a Zevad Habat, a presentation of a daughter, or of the daughter. And a special Misha Berach prayer is recited along with several other prayers, followed by, of course, a festive meal. But in the Reform movement, and we haven't had one here to my knowledge, but there is a ceremony that was created called a Brit Bat, a daughter of the covenant, or a Simchat Bat, rejoicing in the birth of a daughter. It's not found in Torah, so it kind of can be very creative. It has included, my understanding is it can include lighting of candles, washing the baby's feet, wrapping the baby in a talit, saying blessings, of course, and yes, food. Because what ceremony? It always struck me as very interesting. Yeah, you ever stand around in a bris and watch the child be circumcised, and then what do you do right afterwards? Mazel tov, yes, give me a bagel, give me some lox, let's go. I never quite, it's just, it's, yes, please.
Do we have any moils in Hawaii?
We sadly do not have any moils in Hawaii. We have, we used to have, and actually, sadly, very recently, if you didn't know, Dr. David Paperny passed away, died several weeks ago in November. He was one of the two people, and the name escapes me, the other one, but anyway, they were the go-to people for performing the circumcision while the rabbi would do the liturgical part. And that's really what I do now. You work with a OBGYN or doctor at Kaiser or whatever, Straub. They do the medical part, and they're very respectful of the ceremony that goes around that. So sadly we don't, but there is a wonderful moil named Shalom Denbo from, I think, the Bay Area, and we have a family at Temple who has flown him in not once, not twice, but 3 times for a bris, and he does it so beautifully. And just it's like talking to a scribe, a sofer, about the lines in his Torah that are written. He just has beautiful way of doing the whole the ceremony, the bris. So if you ever get a chance to be in the presence of a moil, please. And if you know any Jewish doctors on Oahu who'd be open to becoming trained as a moil, please let me know. Yeah.
Do they go to moil school?
Well, you know what? There's so many programs now, even online, distance programs through URJ or other authorities, that they can be trained. to do it. Yes, Sam.
There are some European countries, I forget which ones,
Right.
want to ban circumcision.
Yes.
Which is also something Muslims do.
Right, right. Yeah, there is. It is.
That's where we go.
Right, exactly. There is a group, and they'll probably be at the biennial I'm going to, that talk about doing something other than a surgical procedure, if you will, an actual circumcision on someone to have them enter the breed, because they have a number of reasons. But
Virtual breed.
yeah, virtual breed there. But really, for the majority, I mean, of Jewish families, they would think in terms of a Brit Milah on the 8th day of life. Yep.
Selwyn was named after his moil.
Oh, really? After his
Selwyn.
moil?
He wanted something with an S after his father's grandma.
Wow.
And it was Shayla.
Okay.
We want something with an S.
Right.
So the moil was Selwyn. Happened to be from the next big
I've
town.
never heard of something named for their moil. I think that's beautiful. The moil must have been so touched. That's great. Had he ever had anybody do that before?
Pardon?
Did he ever have anyone do that before?
No.
That's a great thing.
I can
I don't
hardly
think-
Must have been
wait
the
to see
happiest
Selwyn.
moil.
Well, we're looking for an S.
Right.
A nice name in English.
Yeah, yeah.
Then we turns out it's a Welsh name.
It's a what?
A Welsh
We
Welsh
didn't
name.
even
So,
know that.
well, you can't go better. You can't go
Anyway,
wrong with a moil's name.
Still doing good.
So of course, Brit Milah or Brit Bat is one. Yes.
There's a renaming ceremony, or actually it's a custom,
Uh huh.
and that is if young children were very sick but
Mhm.
recovered,
Right.
they were given chai.
Right. I'm gonna get there, I promise. But yeah, one of the things also I want to point out about Hebrew names being tied to life events or events in our lives are that whether it's children, I've even had it with adults, before a major surgical procedure, or serious illness, it's a tradition or practice to add or change the Hebrew name of someone, using names like Chaim for life or Raphael for healing, so that everything should go well. So that's one of the events that could cause a change in name.
Yeah, there's a lot of primitive cultures that change the name to
Right.
steer away the angel of death.
Right, exactly.
You change someone's name and the angel can't find them.
Right, the angel, the evil eye, or whatever, what have you. Anyway, other life moments that Hebrew names come into play, of course, are being called to the Torah for an aliyah. Typically, you're called with your Hebrew name, or traditionally your Hebrew name, and also your parents' names as well. And if parents' names are not known, then the go-to names, this also goes for Jews by choice, are Abraham and Sarah. For Misha Berach, when we pray for healing, you'll notice on Friday nights sometimes that someone will call out a Hebrew name rather than an English name. That's another traditional practice. When someone is ill, in need of divine help, we mention their Hebrew name and their parents' name. Traditionally, their mother's name, but of course, in a Reformed community as we are, it's parents' names. For the child of an interfaith couple, the Jewish parents' Hebrew name and non-Jewish parents' English names are often used. And we do that for Aliyot as well. We'll say Ben Yonatan Ve'Amy or something like that, which will to honor both parents. Marriage or divorce. When I'm doing a wedding this afternoon, and their couple is going to sign their ketubah, their marriage contract, and their Hebrew names will be on that document, if you will. Or a get in a divorce ceremony, Hebrew names are also used. So for bridegroom at a wedding or wife and husband at a get, also Hebrew names are needed. Finally, for funeral and memorial service, a Hebrew name is used in the chanting. I'm doing an unveiling this week. El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer for our departed loved ones, God full of compassion, has a line, fill in the blank, Hebrew name. Also, it's needed for a tahara, for a washing of a body too, in terms of the prayers that are said for that. So there are many instances in one's Jewish journey where Hebrew names, I think, enhance the meaning of those moments.
What ink do you use
Yep.
when you fill out a ketubah?
Do you use your Hebrew name, Ben or Bat?
What ink?
Oh, ink. No, the truth be told, in my world, ketubah.com fills everything in. Or the person who designed the ketubah will do the calligraphy. Or we're lucky enough to now have Jackie Mildau's sister Myrna, who is able to do the calligraphy. I want to keep it as beautiful as possible, so they did.
We went to Thanksgiving
Right.
at Selwyn's house,
Uh-huh.
and he's got his ketubah
Yep.
mounted on the wall,
Right.
but they didn't use museum quality glass,
Oh.
and the lettering is all faded
Faded.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ink that Sofreme used
Right.
is custom made by themselves
Mm-hmm.
after a tradition passed down from their teachers,
Yeah.
and it's like lamp black
Yeah.
and honey and a little vinegar,
Yeah.
but they each have their own blend.
Well, now you made me regret that when I went to Rabbi Itchel's daughter's wedding last year, that they were filling out the ketubah before the ceremony. They didn't say, by the way, what pen are you using? And it's like using Mont Blanc or using little honey and so forth. That's a good question. I don't, because, and I've older ketubot. I've seen it. They're not really ornate or big like the ones today, and they're just filled in by the rabbi usually, just very in script, not even in printed letters.
In pre ballpoint days,
Right.
everyone used fountain pen ink.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back to your earlier inks,
Mm-hmm.
if you see them on old documents, they've turned almost a red color,
Mm.
red brown
Yeah, yeah,
color.
yeah.
That indicates a high iron content,
Mm.
and those don't fade.
Oh.
So it's your improved inks that
Yeah.
don't last
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah. Now things are very automated. Yes.
It's a faith service afterwards.
Yes.
Neil,
Right.
I got a non-Jew, his first name is Rachamim. Yeah,
Wow.
so you don't have
Wow.
to Jew to have
No,
it.
no, of course not. No, a name is a name. If you love the name Rachamim, compassion. What a great, and it could be just. Hopefully, it's someone who is a very compassionate person, and it fits their name fits their personality.
And his driver's license says Rocky, right?
All right, so a name story, everybody. A name story. When the rabbi asked the father for the name of the boy, the father responded, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, David, Shlomo, Yosef. The rabbi was astounded and asked the father, why so many names? Why such a string of names? And the father replied, Rabbi, I am a poor man, so the child won't have much of an inheritance. If he looks like my side of the family, he's not going to be too handsome. If he resembles my wife's side of the family, I didn't write this story, by the way. If he resembles my wife's side of the family, he probably won't be that smart either. So I decided, let him at least have a good name. That is why Jews always have placed a great emphasis, seriously, on naming a child, for in that name lays their history of their past and family and hopes and blessings for the newborn success in the future. And so that's why a Hebrew name is something I think to be taken seriously and given adequate thought to what name that child yeah, please.
I'm sorry.
No, please, that's
Sorry,
perfect. No, it's perfect.
Was there a time period, it's like I'm thinking of my family, where Jewish people did not, do that? Because it was never done in my family.
In terms of
Hebrew name.
he gave me a Hebrew name, yeah. I'm sure.
Kind of went the other way.
Yeah. I'm sure during times where it was not safe to do that in ancient older times or something, during the times of the Inquisition, whatnot. I'm sure that was done.
Yeah, but we never.
Yeah.
We never did in my family.
That's a good point, and that's why really I think this. I'm really grateful to be able to talk about this subject, because my goal is that anyone in our community who either was not given a Hebrew name, or does not remember the Hebrew name, can participate in a group naming ceremony corresponding to the beginning of Exodus, which is actually called Shemot, names. And so about mid-January, I think it works out to January 17th, I'm going to invite anybody who wishes, and we'll create a certificate, and you'll have your Hebrew name. And I'd love to someday have a Rolodex with everybody's Hebrew names, for calling for an Aliyah, or, sadly, eventually for, Eloi Rachamim. Because it's something I think it would add meaning to our community.
Isn't there one for when you become a member of the...
Yeah, but it's not put in one source. I'd love to have it in one file, or whatever you want.
To put it into a...
What? Yeah, exactly. Well, Thank you for volunteering, Larry. No, I'm just kidding. So that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to how to choose a Hebrew name. So here are some techniques, if you will. And this is probably the most popular one, the most well used. The Ashkenazic custom is not to name a baby after living individuals, but rather to honor memory of a departed relative, grandfather, sometimes could be other relatives as well. There's something beautiful about honoring a family member by naming a child after them. It's a touching way of keeping the memory of that person alive. Another option would be choosing a Hebrew name that sounds like or starts with the same letter as that person's name. And unlike Ashkenazic Jews, Sephardic Jews believe that naming a child after a living relative will actually lengthen rather than shorten their life, as is the belief held by Ashkenazic Jews. That's why they don't name after living. So that's one very popular method. And I'd say probably the majority of you before, that was probably how you came about your Hebrew name. And that's a great thing because you know what? When we have a bar bat mitzvah, talk about their names, probably more often than not, it will be named after, grandpa so-and-so or great-grandfather, and they'll talk about that person. And you can sort of see what their family was thinking for them because they take the good qualities and hopefully that gets passed on to them. Yeah.
If I understood you correctly.
Yes.
You have some that name after the dead.
Right.
And
Some
that name after the living.
Right. Ashkenazic Jews, you don't name a child for someone who is living because that is, you're sort of taking the essence of their soul away and giving it to this other person, shortening life. Sephardic Jews, though, believe that it actually lengthens the person's life. It would be great to do a study, actually, to see who was right, what the lifespan is, and see which side, had it right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's just a different thing. Anyway, other techniques on the next page. Matching. One common tactic in choosing a Hebrew name that will align with is to choose one that will align with your child's English name. There are plenty of Hebrew names that are very accessible English corollaries, he said, like Sarah, Naomi, Leah, Ezra, Daniel, Asher. These are names that could be, that could check both boxes, English names, Hebrew names. Okay. Another option is to choose a Hebrew name that begins with the same letter or sound as the English name. Sadie could be paired with Sarah. Oliver with Leib, Yiddish for lion. Finally, you could choose a Hebrew name that's similar in meaning to your child's English name. Ava, which means life, could lead to the name Chaya, which also means life. Mila, which means merciful, could have Rachamim as a Hebrew name, also meaning compassionate. That's matching. Meaning, there are two main types of Hebrew names. Names that belong to people from Torah, and names that mean something, just in general, on their own. There are names that fit into both categories, of course, like Deborah, who is a judge, a prophetess, and a generally awesome woman, and whose name also means bee, as in buzz. When naming after someone in Torah, it's good to consider what the person was like. Are they someone you wouldn't find too many Hamans around, I don't think, in the world, or Amaleks. Yeah, exactly. Because every time you say, "What's your name?" Haman. Boo! And it's, that wouldn't be a good thing. Are they someone you want your child to take after? In my circles, we don't use names of people who are infamously bad. Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean it should be used. There are many beautiful non-biblical names as well, like Shoshana, which means rose, or Elisa, which means filled with joy. There are more modern Hebrew names like Amichai, which means my nation people live, or Ilan, which means tree. You can even get creative with name combinations like Chaya Tova, which means good life, or Matan Yakir, which means a precious gift. Another method of choosing a Hebrew name is timing. If your child is due around a major holiday, you could choose names associated with that time of year. For example, if you're about to give birth now, you might name your child Yehuda for Judah, as in Judah Maccabee, or Matisyahu. If you're expecting a girl in the springtime, you might consider Aviva, which means spring. Some people like to look at the weekly Torah portion and select a name from that. Others will name after an esteemed person whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of their death, is on the day of the birth of their child. Another factor to take into account is pronounceability. This is especially relevant if you're not planning to give your child an English name. The notorious ch sound, the guttural sound in Hebrew, is one some of my friends avoid using as a consideration to family or just the child. It can be a source of frustration to have your name constantly mispronounced at work, appointments, etc. One of our children is named after a family member, which led to our first sound. I apologize in advance to my parents, but I felt good that at least this child had a pronounceable second name. I didn't realize the combination of ts and tzvi was also very tricky to pronounce. So something else to take into account. And finally, you just like it. It's a name you just like. If none of the previous ways speak to you, there's always the method of getting a Hebrew baby naming book and going through it. I don't lend them out anymore, by the way, because I had a couple borrow my books and I never got them back. So you have to use it in here, folks, if you're going to do that. You can wait for the parental prophecy to kick in as you flip through the pages, or maybe you heard a name somewhere and it always stuck, maybe a character from a TV show or something, or a movie. One of my friends fell in love with the name of a friend's child and she ended up choosing it for herself when she converted. So you never know. There's a number of ways to go about it. Yes, please.
You mentioned Shoshana.
Yes.
And Rose. Shoshana is not his name.
Ah, beautiful. That's a beautiful name, Erevil Shoshanim. So there should be a page that says, Ask the Rebbe. Here we go. Ask the Rebbe.
Okay, Rebbe.
Rebbe, I'm 22 years old, starting to take my Judaism more seriously. The problem is, bless you, that I don't have a Hebrew name. I asked my parents and they can't recall what Hebrew name I was given at birth. So my question is, how do I go about selecting a Hebrew name and has it become official? So to this, the Rebbe answers. The Jewish custom is to give the name of a relative who passed away. That's the Ashkenazic practice. This keeps the person's memory alive and in a metaphysical way forms a bond between your soul and that of your deceased relative. This is a great honor to the departed because its soul can achieve an elevation based on the good deeds that you do. You, meanwhile, can be inspired by the good qualities of that person and make a deep connection to the past. Another idea is to pick the name of a great Jew, someone who embodied qualities like piety, kindness, leadership that you aspire to. What would you use, everybody, as a great Jew? What's a great Jew name? Jewish name of a great Jewish. Moses. Anybody else? Solomon.
Abraham.
Abraham.
We got some women here.
Bugsy. Miriam. Deborah.
Miriam.
We gotta have some women here.
My mother's name. There you go.
Ruth.
Benjamin, Ruth.
My
Okay.
father's
What we can say about Las Vegas, whose
It's a family
founding
name.
father's
You're
first
in
name
my
was
family.
Bugsy.
Yeah, my father's favorite sister.
I love it. Another idea is to pick the name of an angry Jew. We do that. This could be biblical or someone from Jewish history. Some choose a name based on a Jewish holiday, as I said, coinciding with the birth. For example, someone born in Purim time might be Esther or Mordechai. A girl born on Shavuot might be Ruth. A child born on Tisha B'Av, a Jewish day of mourning, might be named Menachem or Nechama. Similarly, names are sometimes chosen from the Torah portion corresponding to the week. Many names and events are mentioned in each Torah portion, offering a spiritual connection between the baby and that particular biblical figure. So that's the advice from the Rebbe on how to go about thinking about a Hebrew name. There's an interesting story about how, is everybody familiar, everybody not familiar with the Jewish reggae star Matisyahu? Who's actually been to Hawaii. He's a very famous reggae artist, happens to be Jewish. He was very traditional in his upbringing, but I believe now he's identifies as conservative. But anyway, so his English name is Matthew Miller, or was Matthew Miller, and the Hebrew name he received at his Brit Milah, was forgotten. In Hebrew school, it was assumed to be Matisyahu because of the connection between Matthew and Matisyahu. That was fortuitous for his musical career because the original Brit certificate was later relocated, revealing that his name was actually Five-ish Herschel, which I don't think would make it too big on the Billboard charts. Look, everybody, let's go see Five-ish Herschel. Five-ish Herschel is probably someone you go see for, like, Sturgeon or something, but not for a concert. So that's what we're talking about here. The importance of a Hebrew name was articulated by King David, of all people, who wrote in Psalms, God counts the number of the stars and gives them each a name. God gives names to each star, for they are dear to God. Like the stars, no two souls are exactly alike. Everyone has a unique function in which he or she excels. Everyone shines a different light. And finally, the actual process for being given the Hebrew name is to simply begin using it. Ask others to call you by that name, and ask the rabbi to say a special blessing for you in synagogue or temple. It's as simple as that. And finally, other possible sources of inspiration for choosing a Hebrew name, if that doesn't do it for you. It could be the name of a holiday, a month, or a season of the year in Hebrew. As I said, Aviv for springtime. Could be the name of a plant, or trees, or flowers found in Israel. You mentioned Shoshana for flowers, for roses. Places in Israel. Historical figures in Jewish history. Current Israeli singers, actors, musicians. Being able to spell it, of course, is a very good thing. It could be named for an animal, a bear, or a wolf, or something from nature, as we said, Devorah, a bee, or Yonah, Jonah, a dove, or Vered, meaning a rose. So there are countless ways that one can either choose a name for a newborn or a name for him or herself. If, as I said, either you never received a Hebrew name, or if you don't remember it, no one remembers it, and no one has the certificate from your Brit Milah or just an announcement of your name. So this is for questions and comments. Yes, Lynn.
My granddaughter, name is Eliana. Is
Oh, okay.
that Hebrew?
Yeah. Eli is one thing, my God. I can go through right now. Yeah, let's go through this. Hold on. Eliana. Like Stump the Rabbi. Let's see. Girl's names. Eliana. Hold on. Oh, Eliana. My God has answered. Popular, especially among those who like the Hebrew name with an English sound, also spelled Eliana with two N's.
Rabbi?
Yes, please. Oh,
Another one.
which name?
Ilana.
Oh, Ilana. Okay, yes, or Ilana. Oh, Ilana with an I. Yes, means an oak tree. Ilana or Ilanit, also spelled Ilana. So there's two different even variations on that. But if you're thinking of your grandchild, I'm assuming it's the first one, but I don't know. Eliana. I'm thinking of it. Rachel. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Other questions, comments? Yeah. Any other names that you've been? Yeah.
I was thinking of the last names.
Mm.
We know that the Levi's and we know
Right.
the Cohens and
Yep.
where they came from.
Right.
But where in general did the other Hebrew names?
Well, that's a good question, because this book, Dictionary of Jewish Names and Their History by Ben Zion Kaganov, actually has a dictionary of selected Jewish names, as in last names. For instance, Davis. Davis is an English name, which means son of David. Some Jews in English-speaking countries assume this form, or took this name. What else? Cornfeld. Cornfeld is the anglicized spelling of cornfield with a K, which means field of grain. It's like you never know. It tells a lot about the family.
Secular family names come from their occupation.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So that's another way of doing it.
Schneider could come from their
Yep.
occupation.
Yes. Yes. In fact, I was just looking for that. Schneider. Schinkel. That's it. Schrader. Schulsinger, German for cantor. Singer. There you go.
Does
Schulsinger.
that
Yes.
have a meaning for king?
For king, I'll look it up, please. Go ahead.
We have a Noah as a
Mhm.
grandchild.
There you go.
We have Elijah,
Mm-hmm.
and we have Ahava.
Oh, beautiful! Wow. You have a lot of history there, and a lot of.
Very Hebrew names.
Yeah. You know, unfortunately, I don't see king in here. I see Kimmelman, a seller of caraway or other spices.
Zimmerman, someone who
Zimmer.
invented-
Yeah, Zimmer. Yes, Zimmer. Exactly.
Is an author.
Because I never have found out where that name
Yeah, that's
came
okay.
from.
Or of course, Waxman. What do you think Waxman would be from?
A candleman.
Yeah, dealer in wax. Selling the blocks of, yeah, really big stretch. So
What else?
yeah.
What else?
But yeah, so exactly, the last name could be as you know, or obviously as meaningful as the first name or first names. So I hope this has been helpful in terms of giving you ideas, food for thought, either more appreciation of your Hebrew name, or if you don't have a Hebrew name, thinking about joining us next month in January for a naming ceremony and being given a name to add more meaning to one's Jewish life, Jewish identity. Yep.
Is there a process for us? I'm one of those who does not have a Hebrew name.
Right.
Do I have to advise you by a certain date, or
That's a great question. Yes, we'll put it out in the e-blast. Once this thing is posted, we'll
okay,
put it out.
It'll all be in the e-blast. It'll all be in the e-blast.
Yes, because just so you know, this recording is going to be, Hashem willing, posted and a link made available, and the notes here will be scanned and made available also. So we'll give everyone a chance to take a look and invite them. I believe it's January 17th, so we'll probably
I
put it
think
out
so,
mid December. Yes.
Do you think it might be helpful to those people to have a physical class session with you? At least one? I'm thinking
Mhm.
really of myself. If I
Yeah.
were trying to do this,
Sure.
I would hate to be given a video
Yeah.
and a piece of paper and
Right.
said, go to it.
Well, you know what? Here's what I think. Rather than maybe a formal class, maybe just either individually or in small groups, people just to
Yes.
come, like, ask the rabbi, ask her, and see what they're thinking, and also look at the
Good
books,
idea.
but look, but don't take.
Are the
'Cause
books gonna be available while you're on the mainland, like if Stephanie will?
I'll put it in the office with Stephanie because I
Ask
want.
the
Yeah,
rabbi.
exactly. Ask the rabbi for any guidance or something like that. But really, I think it's a very personal thing.
Do you have a time on the signature?
It's Friday night service.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a bat mitzvah the next day, but and so I think rather than doing a sermon about names, I think having a naming ceremony and talking about this would be just really moving and really touching. So, and a spoiler alert: the next project I'm hoping to do in the 2020 is to I took a class on writing contemporary liturgy, and to make that available to people too, to have that. Thank you, Morton Emeroff, for suggesting that, and thank you, Marie, for going with the idea. Yeah, please, Michael. Yes, well, there's a voice from me. Yes.
What if you're given a Hebrew name you don't like?
Ah,
You want to change it.
you know what? There's nothing I think that would stop one from picking a new name, a Hebrew name, because especially if you feel that fits you more, sort of in your growth, in your journey.
Well, I was
What was your
named
name?
Shimshon, which is
Shimshon.
Samson.
Yeah, Samson.
And I had bright red hair.
Oh.
like Samson.
Oh, perfect. Wow.
But I was brought up exactly the opposite way.
Okay.
Very suppressed and
Mhm.
shy.
Right.
So I changed my legal name when I was 36 years
Yep.
old.
Right.
And I went through a whole book and everything.
Okay.
And I chose a name.
Yeah.
And about a year later, I said, "Oh my God, that's my grandfather's name. That's my grandfather's
Wait,
name."
you didn't realize it when you picked your name that was your grandfather. Wow.
I didn't.
Wow.
No, it was sort of like
That was
Yeah.
wow. What
But
a
I mean, I
moment.
practiced writing
Yes.
it, and I practiced saying it,
Right.
and stuff like that.
Well, I think to formalize that would be a beautiful thing, and I think you have you're if you want to have a ceremony with the Hebrew name, you can make that official.
All right, I think
Yes,
I'll do that.
please.
Yeah, 'cause I
Yeah.
never tell anybody the English name that was given,
Yeah.
which was a bastardization of Samson.
Right.
It
Well, Samson, I mean,
relates to a body part.
Right. We won't go down on camera, but anyway. Any other comments or questions before I push the button off, and then we can talk a little more. We have a couple more minutes anyway. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all, and like I said, please may this technology work, and may we have a beautiful evening together in January to make sure that more of our community can be blessed with his or her Hebrew name. And with that, Lahitrat.